Hello and welcome once again to Off the Shelf Books on Tour. We have a really unique book to talk about today. My guest is James Charlesworth, and the book is The Patricide of George Benjamin Hill. Now that sounds very historical, but he's not. He's not really real.
Right, exactly.
But
Right.
it certainly sounds like he is.
It does. So actually, the title was the first thing that I came up with for this book. I had it before I wrote a single word. And usually it doesn't work that way, obviously. Usually a title doesn't come along until well into the writing process, and sometimes weeks before the book goes to production. But in this case, I had it the first thing, and then the second thing I had was what's called the elevator pitch. Which can be a useful thing to have when you're working on a novel, not only to keep it straight in your own head, but also to sort of answer the inevitable question of what's your book about. And so the elevator pitch that I had for this book, it's been sort of interesting to see the reactions I get to it. But the elevator pitch was, it's about 4 adult siblings who decide to kill their father. And usually results in...
That pretty much says it all, but it is convoluted.
Well, that's one word, I guess.
I don't know how you ever kept them straight. Did you know that's what you wanted to write, or did it just form as you wrote?
A little bit of both. I knew coming into it that I wanted the father to be this sort of prolific and careless figure of white capitalist patriarchal society, and I also wanted the 4 siblings to sort of become emblematic of different aspects of kind of the disillusionment and paranoia that is a result of that. And so I started with that, and I also knew very early on that I wanted the story to sort of be on a sort of grand geographic scale.
Oh, you think, let me see. We went to Alaska, Las Vegas, Miami, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Did you ever stop in Massachusetts?
You forgot New York. You forgot about New York City. So the 4 siblings live in New York City, Florida, Alaska, and Las Vegas. And they're sort of, in the main sort of present tense of the novel, they're sort of converging on their father, who is this sort of semi-retired, enormously wealthy, sort of industrial, and they're sort of converging on him, and he's in Omaha, Nebraska, at the.
But you described the city so well in research. Did you go to every one of them? And
I did not.
You didn't?
I did not. I've never been to Alaska. I've never been to Las Vegas. I've been to Miami, I've been to New York, I've been to Omaha, but it was a lot of research, both online and a lot of reading. And the other thing is, it was not only researching different locations, but it was researching different locations during different time periods.
yeah, that's the toughie. From the Dust Bowl to the Depression, things have changed a little bit.
A little bit, just a
I'm
little bit.
surprised you're so young you even know about the Dust Bowl.
I did a lot of reading. Grapes of Wrath was an early sort of influential book for me.
But
so.
everybody doesn't read it.
Grapes of Wrath.
And
Yeah.
everybody doesn't know the history that you glean from to get them from one place to another. And you did a very good job on Alaska.
Thank you. You've been
We're an Alaskan. Hubby was there in the Army. So we hear about Alaska all the time.
So you lived there?
No,
Okay.
he did. And he went back 4 years ago to his original barracks. The same, but different.
Yeah.
The same soda fountain in town where he paid a nickel for a Coke. It's now $1.05.
Wait, is this in Anchorage or where is this?
Fairbanks.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's where the Alaskan portion of my book takes
Yeah,
place.
so what you were describing, I've heard. That's that. Except you didn't talk about the mosquitoes that were as big as jet planes.
Well, there is a line, mosquitoes as big as something. It's not jet planes, but it's something else,
You
not
talked
quite so
about-
large.
How long from start to finish?
So I started writing this book in 2007. I had just moved back to Boston. I had been living in Maine for about 4 years. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but I moved up to New England to go to grad school. And when I finished that, I sort of felt this need to sort of strike out on my own and live the life of the solitary writer. So I spent 4 years in Maine working on another novel, and then I moved back to Boston in 2007, scrapped the old novel, which was in some ways sort of a forerunner to this in a lot of ways. It was about sort of father and child relationships. And I started Patricide in 2007. And then I finished a draft of it, I think around 2010. And I sent it around to agents. The first step in sort of taking your manuscript and getting it published is to get an agent. So I sent what I thought was a finished version out to agents. Got a little bit of, there was some people wanted to look at it, but it ended up not going anywhere. So I went back to the drawing board and ended up finishing basically this version around 2015. And then I will continue with this saga. I got the agent pretty quickly at that point, but it was on submission for about a year. We finally sold it. We got an offer, I think, around September 2016. Negotiated that, sold it December 2016, and then it was 2 years from the time I sold it until the time it came out for a variety of different reasons.
But that's important to our viewers because everybody would like to write a novel.
Mm-hmm.
But then after it's done, you get into this whole different world.
You do.
That takes you, you're sitting here with me. Did you think you were going to do that?
No, I did not. I did not.
And libraries.
Right.
And bookstores and book groups and publishers and rejection notices.
Oh, plenty of rejection notices. I mean, if you're going to be a writer, you have to learn to take rejection and understand that it's not personal. It's so difficult to catch the eye of first an agent, then an editor, when you're one of hundreds of query letters or pitches that they're looking at that day, and they're overworked, and they might have things going on in their personal life. There's so many reasons that your book can get rejected that have nothing to do with your book.
Do you think the internet access has made it easier or harder?
I think, both probably. I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's made it easier because as a writer, you can do better research on who you're pitching and what agents you're sending to. So, there are resources to sort of find out about each individual agent, what they're looking for, what their interests are, what other writers they've worked with. And then you can do things like follow them on Twitter and things like that and learn about them that way. So in that way, it's made it easier. But it's harder because I think there are just more people writing books than ever before.
Or thinking they can write a book.
Well, right, setting down or sort of starting down that path toward publication. There's just millions of people doing that every minute, and you're in that stream of people that's trying to fit through this little, space in the.
So, other than The Grapes of Wrath, what did you read when you were a kid that you wanted to be a writer?
So one of my earliest memories is sort of sitting in my sister's bedroom with my sister and my mother reading us The Once and Future King, which is sort of the Arthurian legend. So I started out reading a lot of fantasy. I was a big Stephen King fan when I was young, and then when I got to college, I gravitated a little bit more toward kind of so-called literary fiction. Great Gatsby was something I read very early on and absolutely loved. More recent, for a while, I was really obsessed with John Irving. I spent the whole decade of my 20s. But more recently, Susan Choi's book, American Woman, is a book that is quite possibly my favorite book of all time. It's just fantastic. And I think some of the style from Patricide sort of came from that.
So you should know that Stephen King didn't have it any easier than you.
I know the Stephen King story, right?
They were living in a one-room apartment in Bangor, and she was pregnant, and she said, "Stephen, get a job." And he said, "We're selling the rights to Carrie. If we sell it for $25,000, we get $10,000. Stephen, get a job." And off to work she went in a cold winter's night in Bangor, Maine. They called. They sold the rights for $50,000. He wanted to buy her a present. He wanted to have something on the table. when she came home to celebrate what's open in Bangor, Maine on a Sunday night.
Right, not too much.
Rexall Drugstore.
Okay.
He bought her a hairdryer.
what a lovely gift. At $50,000 in 1973 or whatever that would
For a
have been.
paperback.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
But
not too shabby.
the book proved it was worth the investment.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but there were a lot of years of. I just remember hearing a story that he used to have this writing desk that was like next to the washer and dryer because it was the only space that they
And
had.
he's afraid of the dark.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, I couldn't get over that one.
That might be made up. That's
No,
mythology.
he told me
Oh,
himself.
did he? Okay, all right.
He wasn't proud of it, but yeah, no. So now the baseball player, each individual, did you fashion them after somebody you know?
No, I don't think so. But I do think each of them. I mean, I think every author, there's a part of them in every character that they write, and so the baseball player especially. At the time I was working on this book, I was feeling kind of the same thing he's feeling. There's one of the siblings in the book is this sort of career minor league baseball player who's sort of struggling to make the majors and
Never takes off his spikes.
and yeah, right. And later in the book, he's sort of going through this semi-delusional thing when he's walking around in a baseball uniform. But at the time, I was kind of fighting with the same thing, having devoted 10, 15 years of my life to something, to writing books, and sort of not seeing any reward for it. And so I think a lot of that comes out in his character in particular.
So it's been out since January. How is it doing?
I mean, I don't know, and I
Well,
kind
you
of
don't
let
know,
that.
You don't get a read?
I haven't asked and I haven't looked. I do know that they did a second printing, so that's a good sign. But as far as like sales, I just am staying away from that. I don't even want to know. At some point, I will get a statement and I'll find out. But that's still a few months down the road. I've just been focusing on, getting out there, doing events, meeting as many people as I can, just sort of enjoying it. Because I think when you're a young writer and you're like 15 years ago when I was sort of imagining the day that I would have a book out, one of the things that I was really looking forward to was going to bookstores and doing readings and doing things like this and just sort of meeting people and sort of spreading the story of how I came to arrive at this moment and encouraging
You can
other
do
writers.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed Nicholas Sparks for Message in a Bottle. And I said, you'll come back. And he said, of course. I said, no, you won't. You're going to get rich and famous and you're going to forget all about us. And he said, no. Yeah. So it's about 20 years later and I actually got his private email and I threatened him. And he called, he was at Harvard Coop. And we brought the cameras in there because his people didn't recognize the name. I wasn't anybody. And they didn't schedule him.
They want to live, yeah.
But how nice that he remembered.
He did, good.
He did, because we were there at the very beginning.
Right. It's important to remember the people.
But when you get to be big and famous, I'm going to have you put it in writing that you'll come back.
I absolutely will. If I get big and famous, I wouldn't hold your breath. But
I see that you have your own webpage. Do you hear from people who have read the book?
Occasionally, yeah. It's
Positive?
I mean, I think mostly if people take the time to contact you, it's because they enjoyed it. I think the people who have negative feelings about it aren't as attached to it.
Well, I ask them what book they wrote.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I mean, there's been mixed reviews. I've gotten really great reviews, and I've gotten really not great reviews.
It's very unique. I mean, there's a lot of books passed before these eyes, and I've not seen this storyline. I've not viewed the intricacies, but it's real. Did you have a happy childhood?
Yeah, I had a happy
It doesn't
childhood.
reflect in the
right,
book.
I know. Yeah, it's a pretty dark book. I mean, there's no
I'm
denying
glad you said that and not me.
Oh, you're allowed to say it.
But family is.
Yeah. it
I
can
haven't
be.
met Cinderella yet, have you?
No, not
I don't
at
think
all.
she lives here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, every family has secrets, and there's sort of inner, disillusionments and resentments and things like that. And what this book does is just sort of amplifies that and puts it on a sort of really grand scale.
Or it gives you a peek into what your world could be, and you can really enjoy and appreciate what you've got.
Well, that's a great way of looking at the book. If my book makes you sort of sit back and be like, wow,
and I thought I had it
at
bad.
least I'm not these people.
Is there another one in the works?
There is another one in the works. So last year, I finished a first draft. I do first drafts very, very quickly.
Do you do outline like your English teacher taught you?
Not sort of.
I'm going to tell on you.
Yeah, right, exactly. I usually have this book, and a lot of what I do, there's generally sort of several different storylines. So I usually sort of outline what the different storylines are, but I don't so much outline the structure. And then I do first drafts very quickly. I write it in longhand because I can't read
Cursive
my own writing.
even.
It's not cursive, trust me. It's very sloppy, very difficult to read. And the reason I do that is because I can't, in order to read it, I have to sit there and figure it out. And that keeps me from revising as I'm writing, because otherwise I'll write a sentence and then rewrite it 5 times.
So it's your own governor.
It is my own governor. But so I finished a first draft of another book last year, and I've been letting it marinate, and I'm deciding whether I'm going to go back to it or I'm deciding what's next. But it's been so busy lately with events and stuff like that I'm kind of living the other writer life. There's the writer as artist life, and then there's the writer as promoter and antenna signaling. Look at my book. So
Messages, appointments.
Exactly.
Do you see the time when you will be writing and doing public appearances?
Hopefully. Hopefully that's the goal. A lot of it was, so my publisher for this book didn't really put together a tour or anything like that. And
I understand they don't. In the beginning, I used to have people that would meet my authors at the airport and drive them to the studio and take them to lunch and take them to their hotel, That doesn't happen anymore, I guess.
It happens for the elite, but not for me. You've never before have writers been so responsible for promoting and getting the word out about their own book. Publishers they don't pour money into those resources like they used to for a variety of very valid reasons. But it puts the onus on the authors to get out there and really push it, and it makes it hard to focus on writing. But for me, it's just those are such different mind spaces that I can't, if I know I have this at 10:30 this morning, I can't get up at 6 and focus on writing because
what I wondered, yeah.
my brain is going to be thinking about this, So I'm hopeful in the summer when things start to sort of settle down that I'll be able to.
Well, they'll pick up.
Or they'll pick up, and that would be great.
I often wonder, when you pick the name, did you ever Google the name to see who else was named
George Benjamin Hill? I did not.
There's a baseball player
named George Benjamin Hill?
Really? And a very prestigious State Department person.
And it's George Benjamin Hill?
Yes.
Really?
I was really, because I wondered if it was a real name.
See, I Googled, at some point I did Google, this was after it was picked up for publication, I did Google it, but I didn't see the baseball player. Or I remember coming across some historical figure, but I don't really remember the exact details of who he was, but I will have to check out
this one that I saw wasn't historical, he's more modern.
Really?
If he walked in right now, we'd both stand up and salute.
Power
person type.
I'll have to, Google this guy. Maybe we can do a little event together or something. We can get together sometime.
Now, have you got a name for the book that's off the side?
No, I don't. I have a couple sort of working titles, but they're working titles, and they're not ready for the world yet. Nor is and another thing is I don't like to talk too much about what I'm working on because it somehow feels like when it's still sort of in my brain, it it feels sort of detrimental to sort of let any piece of it out into
Well,
the
that's
world.
like me when I won't talk to you before the camera goes on.
Yeah, you were
like-
very stoic.
Yes, I was. But I like the spontaneity.
Right.
You know, and I wish I could push a button and turn the camera on so that I could talk to you and make you more comfortable. But the spontaneity is important. Like, you know, you want people to know you as a person.
Right. Yeah, I kept trying to look at your little sheet there to see if I could find out what any of the questions were going to be.
Oh, no, there are people that will come in and say, here are the questions you will ask me, and everybody goes,
no, I like this much better. I like this much better.
It works. It
does.
It's important. It's important that someone who's out there about to embark on it knows that you lived through it.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that what did it feel like when you got the box and you opened it up and you saw it?
It was pretty exciting. It's also very nerve-wracking. You know, that's when it starts to become real. I mean, there are several points along the way where you really sit back and you think, wow, this is really happening.
What
and
have I gotten myself into?
And that's a big part of it.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm in this online group called Debut Authors 19. There's like 200 of us, all debut authors, and we have a Facebook group where we can kind of commiserate and talk about sort of different aspects of it, and everybody says the same thing, that moment when you first see the hardcover is like elation and also just sort of terror.
Well, we're going to stop now, and you're going to read us something so our viewers can get an idea of your style now that they know about the story.
Okay, sounds great.
Right back.
Alaska. 4 hours in, his plan nearly dies. A storm whites out the sky above Icy Bay, obscuring the 18,000-foot glacial dump of Mount St. Elias. He has piloted his second-hand DHC Beaver down from Fairbanks on a day that dawned brilliant with autumn, the wilderness a thousand-hued carpet. Now the system has stormed in from the southwest, roiling off the Pacific and blooming silver on the ridgeline of the Wrangell Mountains, the corridor of light from the retrofitted headlamps illuminating the precipitation that rattles the airframe and freezes on impact. He is a veteran of this weather, has nearly 20 years of bush experience, has piloted this battered vessel as far north as Nome, as far south as Kodiak Island, has logged more hours than half the so-called pilots flying commercial jets in the lower 48, but today was the one day he had wished for calm weather to give him time to think. From Juneau, he will catch a flight south to Seattle, from there on to Las Vegas, and then by car east to Omaha via Denver. But first, there is the process of selling his plane. He has already sold his pickup truck, his guns, his hunting and trapping equipment, has already foregone every possession, including the cabin and parcel of land straddling the Canadian border where he thought he would spend the remainder of his life. Why has he done this? He's done it at the behest of the calling that has tormented him for the past 3 years. He's done it for the money that will help him to procure the object that has become his preoccupation, the motive that has led him to track down and send letters to the 3 siblings he has not seen in over 20 years, that has led him now to be on his way to Omaha, Nebraska, to find the man he now refuses to call father. It almost dies up here, in the turbulent solitude of 15,000 feet, impact ice in the air intake causing the engine to run rough, a drop in manifold pressure. The tachometer flickers as ice begins to form in the carburetor. The engine coughs and then is silent. He lowers the nose into the whine of wind and procession of cloud, flaps at cruise to maintain airspeed, opens the throttle and primes with the wobble pump. Up ahead, invisible, is the face of a mountain, a cliffside, a spectacular death. If the restart fails, a dead engine landing is impossible. He closes his eyes and waits for it, and then, against every lesson life has taught him up to this point, the engine crackles and returns. The lights of the instrument panel dazzle. He re-engages the controls and imagines he can hear the landing gear scraping the frozen peaks of the foothills. The system passes, and he is aloft in the blue dome over Glacier Bay, the archipelago speckling the golden ocean. The sun is at his back and showing purple on the snow-covered mountainside, assuring him, yes, you were saved today. You were saved from certain destruction in order to finish what you have started. As he radios in his descent, He watches the light prism on the water and the tin rooftops of a salmon town and the icy ridge above and whispers something inaudible. Not a prayer, he doesn't believe in God, but a pledge. To his twin sister, to his half-brothers, to his estranged mother, and finally to the man he refuses to call father, the man whose far-off mansion on the plains marks the X-spot of this 3,000-mile journey, the man whose life story will always serve as preamble to his own.
And it's hard to believe that you never rode in a little plane over the tundra in Alaska
Right.
with frozen.
That's all research.
Yeah, but the experience is well documented.
Thank you.
It's as if you were there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm glad I wasn't in the plane with you.
Right, yeah, right, exactly.
Very, very interesting book. By all means, take it on. It's worth the challenge. Barnes & Noble, Amazon.
Yeah, all those places.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it should be available. If not, if it's not available in the Barnes & Noble or the independent bookstore closest to you, I'm sure they'd be happy to order it for you. Or you can get it online through the various avenues that we all know of.
And thank God. But the internet's brought that to us.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Good
It's a lot
luck
of
with
fun.
the book, and
Thank you.
please pencil us in when you get rich and
I
famous.
will. I will. I'll put you on my rich and famous.
You
agenda.
heard that. You're all my witnesses. That's it for today. Off the Shelf, Books on Tour, the book, George Benjamin Hill.
Comma, the patricide of.
Yeah, oh yes. That's why you're here. Have a good one. Bye.